Good morning and welcome to the Killik & Co market update. This week, British Steel has gone into insolvency in yet another example of the negative impacts of Brexit-related uncertainty. Several thousand jobs have been put at risk and the government is currently trying to find a buyer so that the company can remain operational. It's seen as highly important to have a national steelmaking capacity for a number of reasons, particularly defence and also construction. Network Rail is actually one of the major clients of British Steel, and the majority of railway tracks in the UK are made using the product of British Steel. Now, clearly the government will be investigating to see exactly what caused the collapse of this company, but in the meantime there are a number of quite clear factors. The first is the rise in the price of iron ore, one of the key inputs into the making of steel. And if you have a look at this chart here showing the price of iron ore over the last 5 years, you can see the price has more than doubled since May 2016. Another factor is the weakness in sterling. So because iron ore trades in dollars, the fact that our currency has weakened so much means that buying iron ore has become more expensive for British Steel. So have a look here at the chart of sterling against the dollar over the last 5 years. As you can see, it weakened clearly on the eve of the referendum, and it has continued to decline since then, particularly this week if we have had the news of Theresa May potentially stepping down. A third factor is clearly the Brexit-related uncertainty. A number of overseas buyers of steel from the UK just don't know what sort of tariffs they'll have to pay in the future if they're buying steel from the UK, and therefore they just haven't been placing any orders. And clearly that's caused huge problems in the cash flow of British Steel. So lots of potential reasons there. But as I say, it's just one more example of the negative impacts of Brexit-related uncertainty on the real economy in the UK. And also this week, Trump in the US has really stepped up his fight against the Chinese telecoms giant Huawei. So previously he has said that he will not be using Huawei telecoms equipment in the rollout of 5G in America. And the reason for that is that he believes the Chinese government could use this equipment for spying. And he's also been urging other countries not to use Huawei's 5G equipment either. This week he's gone a step further and he's actually put Huawei on the US's so-called entity list. And that will make it very difficult for any businesses in the US to do business with Huawei. And as an example, this week Google or Alphabet has come out and said that Huawei will not be able to use updated versions of the Android operating software in Huawei phones. Now, Huawei is actually a huge player in the smartphone space. Have a look at this chart here showing the market shares of various different smartphone manufacturers. So at the top, the green line, you can see that Samsung is currently the world's largest maker of smartphones. Huawei is actually number 2, so that puts it ahead of Apple. So the fact that Huawei has now been told it will not be able to use the latest versions of Android operating software, that's not going to do any favours for relations between the US and China. And markets have actually fallen a bit this week as people become less confident that a deal will be reached in the trade war between the US and China. And finally this week, Pratts has announced it will be buying its rival Eat for an undisclosed sum, and it will be converting all of the Eat outlets into vegetarian Pratts. So it's just one more example of the rise in the popularity of vegetarian and vegan food. And this is certainly a theme that we're watching closely at the moment. Now, moving along to the week ahead, it looks like it's going to be a fairly quiet week. The UK market is closed on Monday because of the bank holiday, and actually next week there are no companies on the Killik & Co covered list reporting, but we have got results coming out from Workday over in the US, also Johnson Matthey and De La Rue over in the UK. That's it from us. Have a great weekend and we'll see you next Friday.